And you thought this was management. They call it wildlife management, vegetation management, forest management, pest management, land management. The language is always the same. Carefully chosen words designed to sound responsible, scientific, and necessary. Management. But what if what we're witnessing is something else entirely? What if the world itself has become a shield, one that hides the true cost being paid by the living world? Because when I look across the landscape today, I do not see management. I see the disappearance. I hear the silence. I see a slow unraveling that most people are too busy to notice until it reaches their own doorstep, and by then, the damage is already done. The poison hiding in plain sight. Recently, the government authorized the return of M44 sodium cyanide devices on public lands. These devices are designed to kill predators. A bait is placed, an animal pulls, a deadly dose of cyanide is released. Simple, efficient, managed. At least that's how it's described. But poison does not possess judgment. It does not distinguish between a coyote and a family dog. It does not recognize an endangered species. It does not understand the difference between a target and a mistake. The poison simply does what poison does. It kills. And when we place poison into an ecosystem, we are not interacting with isolated animals. We are interacting with an entire food web. Predators regulate prey. Prey influences vegetation. Vegetation influences insects. Insects support birds. Birds support ecosystems. Pull enough of those threads, and eventually the fabric begins to tear. The bigger picture? The cyanide devices, the herbicides, the pesticides, the aerial spraying, the forest treatments, the habitat loss, the invasive species, the disappearing insects, the declining birds, the dying forests. Each issue is typically discussed as though it exists in isolation, but wildlife does not experience them separately, and neither do we. The birds experience all of them. A forest experiences all of them. An ecosystem experiences all of them. Layer upon layer, pressure upon pressure, year after year, decade after decade, until the cumulative effect becomes impossible to ignore. Perhaps that is the most important question of all. At what point does management become something else? At what point do endless interventions cease to be stewardship and become domination? At what point do we stop asking whether a program achieved its intended goal and start asking what was the cost along the way? Because when I look around today, I see a world being increasingly managed and destroyed. I see fewer birds, fewer insects, weaker forests, more chemicals, more restrictions, more interventions, and less of the living world that once seemed abundant. Maybe the greatest warning sign isn't any single poison spray operation or policy. Maybe it's the growing silence itself, the silence of missing wings, the silence of missing insects, the silence of forests that no longer feel alive, the silence that settles over a landscape long before most people realize something has been lost. And once the silence arrives, bringing life back is far more difficult than managing its decline.